Hi, happy Monday, everyone. I'm so excited to be here to talk about food security. So I am going to introduce myself. My name is Talia Rodriguez, and I work in the Office of Civic and Community Engagement. I work on a project called the West Side Promise Neighborhood. It is a hyper-local consortium, meaning it is a group of folks gathered together to have a particular focus on a neighborhood. And that neighborhood happens to be a place that I'm from. If we could progress to the next slide. Okay. I'm Talia. I'm a West Sider. I have the lived experience of poverty, and I struggled with food insecurity as a child. I am a SUNY trained policy analyst and community organizer. I attended both SUNY Buffalo State and SUNY Empire State College for graduate study. I am dedicated, as are the rest of the folks in my office, to making systems stronger that serve people in poverty, to hopefully improve immediately their quality of life. I work in an office dedicated to community building. At SUNY Buffalo State, we have the privilege of having our own office for civic and community engagement. And in that office, we hope to match the college's expertise and talents and opportunities and energies with some of the needs of our neighbors. So that is a unique opportunity that I have, and one that I'm privileged in an environment I'm privileged to work in. Uniquely, both the president of our college, Dr. Conway Turner, and my director, Laura Rao, are both female. And female leadership is really core to this project. And without their leadership, as well as the leadership of the provost, this project would not exist today. This is a picture of myself volunteering, bringing food into one of the local Buffalo Municipal Housing Administration developments in which I lived during our time of our Food Security Council. So what we're going to do today is kind of talk about how the Food Security Council progressed. I'm going to pause and ask you all for feedback, and then we're going to bring in a community partner around 1240 for him to talk about his experiences directly as a provider in the 14207 zip code. So we're going to talk about my office, we're going to talk about the area that I work in, and what our group was privileged to impact this time during COVID. If we could go to the next slide. So again, I work in the Office of Civic and Community Engagement. I'm not sure how many of you know, but the University of Buffalo State was founded in 1871. We started as a teacher's college, and part of why that's really important today and relevant in this project is because we were pushing in teaching educational leaders and preparing them to serve children in Buffalo Public Schools. And that's what we continue to do today proudly. You'll see images here of some of the class of the first Teachers College. Many of them were women. You also see the image here of my president, and you'll also see some of our students who remain actively involved throughout various different activities, specifically Bengals Dare to Care Day. We have alternative break. We have a multitude of opportunities for our students to engage with the community, and WSPN is one of those opportunities. So we actually specialize in connecting with and empowering our neighbors at the SUNY Buffalo State Civic and Community Engagement Office, and part of our work is to directly interface with our neighbors, and we really put them at the core of all our projects. We consider them to be the experts. If you could continue the next slide. So we started home. As I mentioned, the WSPN project is a hyper-local consortium. We focus on zip codes 14207, which our presentation will predominantly center around. We also include zip codes 14213, 14201, and 14222. Our college has a large footprint in the neighborhood, and we are hoping to affect positive change in all of the zip codes that our college actually physically touches, which are the 4 zip codes that you see before you. So we're just going to talk a little bit about 14207. 14207 is to the utmost north of Buffalo, right at the top west corner of the city. And we are going to talk about the residents in this neighborhood and why our work centered on advocating for them first during our health crisis of COVID. If we could progress to the next slide, please. So our WSPN mission is to make Buffalo's West Side a vibrant, safe, and healthy, inclusive neighborhood. We envision a community where families and individuals are strong, children are healthy, and every youth succeeds in school and achieves lifelong success. So we understand that these are very aspirational goals, but together as neighbors, we hope to create positive change and to make sure that children, which are at the core of WSPN, are healthy, vibrant, and safe. We all understand why proper nutrition and food is really important for children, specifically to fuel their minds. And we have centered, as a result of COVID, our efforts on making sure that food security is something that is understood to really be integral in the lives of public school children and the children in which we are hoping to create future leaders. If you could progress to the next slide, Pete. Our WSPN goals. So WSPN started in 2012. There was an academic on campus that brought together a group that was focused on looking for opportunities of infrastructure, funding, and partnership for the West Side. So throughout the time, our goals have evolved, but they've really stayed centered on the idea that we are hoping to improve the lives of our neighbors. So our WSPN goals are labeled 1 through 7. Youth, families, and individuals are healthy and safe is the goal that I usually focus on. It is, again, an aspirational goal, but one that really speaks to the core of what WSPN is hoping to achieve. Number 7 is also really important. West Side residents and stakeholders are civically engaged community leaders, because one of the things that West Side Promise Neighborhood has the ability to do is to run a leadership program so that our self-identified leaders in the community are provided with authentic community-based leadership development. So within goals 1 through 7, we really include aspirational hopes for all demographics of our neighbors. We have values that we hope are interwoven with our work. Those I'm going to read because they're really important to me. And I was actually at the meeting where consensus was formed around these values. So our first value is equity. We talk about inclusiveness and accessibility, including ableism. Cultural and religious responsiveness is at the core of our work, understanding that the West Side and our neighbors are incredibly diverse, and that is a strength. And we have a neighborhood and resident-centric focus, meaning that we put our neighbors first and we defer to them as experts in their own lived experience. Some of the pictures before you include our work. There's a picture of a church. On that church in that church are pews, and on those pews are bags of food that Buffalo State students prepared that were brought together from the WSPN food security efforts. There's also pictures of our dynamic neighbors who we hope to support with our food security work. If you could advance to the next slide, please. So COVID-19 impacts the WSPN community heavily. There's many people in the neighborhoods that we are focused on, which are specifically Riverside and Blackrock, that have really structural situations that affect their accessibility to core services for their life. So we're going to talk a little bit about Riverside and Blackrock. In 14207, there are over 50 restaurants and business licenses issued to restaurants. There's over 50 food stores that the city of Buffalo has issued license to. There is one food pantry. There's also only one location to access hot meals. We know that in Riverside, according to Open Data, which is an open data source the city hosts, according to their neighborhood profiles, there's around 11,000 people in Riverside. Now, this information was collected pre-COVID. That was including 4,200 households. In Blackrock, where the Food Security Council has impacted real change, there are 3,991 individuals, 1,674 households, and 30% of that population is over 45, all of which are served by one food pantry. The median income in the city we know is around $35,000 per capita. My neighbors make $14,917. We have a 42% poverty rate. And we have a young community. Our median age is 30 in Blackrock, and our median age in Riverside is 32. Needless to say, COVID added to the vulnerabilities that my neighbors have due to their economic situations, have really exacerbated some of the pre-existing social determinants of health. If you could advance the next slide, please. What we know. So what we knew when we started the WSPN Food Security Council was that there were reasons why the West Side, specifically Blackrock, specifically Riverside, were going to be challenged when they were accessing information and adjusting to a change of life as a result of COVID and the limitations of social distancing. So we thought about language access. According to the health department, there are 33 ethnicities and more than 70 languages and dialects spoken in the West Side. We thought about gender bias. Many of my neighbors are full-time working females and they earn 25% less than their male counterparts. We talked about lack of options. The Oshai Foundation said of the 45 not-for-profit providers west of Maine, only 17% provide food access. We thought about the children that are always the core of WSPN, and according to the Oshai Foundation, there are more than 10,600 children, many of which I am related to, and of which I used to be a West Side kid, or 45% of children in the West Side living in poverty. In some of the blocks where SUNY Buffalo State's WSPN Food Security Council has been leveraging their neighbors and creating collective impact, we see 40 to 60% of children with families living in poverty. That means that some of our neighbors are not living in poverty, but those who are living in poverty are living close to each other in concentrated areas, of which we've tried to create impact. We also know, according to open data, and I mentioned this, my neighbors make around $15,000 per capita. So when you think about the challenges that you had, or that all of us had, or our community had, adjusting to a pace of life with social distancing, we knew that some of these variances, some of these nuances that make my community so strong and make the SUNY Buffalo State community surrounding it so strong, were going to affect our children's ability to access food. And that was really important to us. And we really wanted to start a conversation about how access to food was going to be had for our neighbors during COVID-19. If you could advance the next slide, please. So the SUNY Buffalo State knows that our neighbors experience a lot of different social determinants of health. We have some gun violence in this neighborhood that the Buffalo Police and many neighborhood groups are working desperately to address. We also have job loss. So many of my neighbors and many of the residents of the city of Buffalo lost their job as a result of COVID. We had folks coming to Pantry, and you'll hear from our community partner later. We had folks coming to Pantry who had never come to Pantry in their life, and just really were unsure about how to access food. But as neighbors, we're looking for that resource, and our community partner will talk to you about those neighbors and how he's been able to serve them. Can we advance to the next slide? Thank you. So WSPN does food work. Why did WSPN do food work? Why does a hyper-local consortium, a project? We have 35 different organizations that are at our core. We have 12 organizations that are at our steering committee. We are facilitated by SUNY Buffalo State. Why did we come to say we want to focus on food? Well, first and foremost, WSPN is a part of SUNY Buffalo State, and we are part of the Coalition of Urban and Metropolitan Universities. I'm proud to say that my president has had a leadership role in forming the mission of this coalition, and we are part of the Anchor Learning Network, and we are part of a larger conversation with other universities of trying to understand how do we leverage our presence, our big presence as an anchor institution, both physically, resources, and energy-wise, to improve the lives of our neighbors. So for those of you watching, or for those of you who may be watching who are not from Buffalo, we're going to really talk about 14207 and why we focus our efforts in this place. The core of what the neighborhood we serve, Riverside, is known to be is at Tonawanda Street in Ontario. And my image before you will show that that's 2.2 miles from the door of Buffalo State. 2.2 miles from our classroom have we been working to bring food into the community, and only 2.2 miles away, our neighbors are desperate for that resource. So with the charge from Kumu and with us wanting to lead the way as neighbors, and also because this project was postured to support our neighbors, we initiated a food security council. And you'll see a timeline that talks about that process a little bit later. Can we advance to the next slide, please? Okay, so this is the intersection on Ontario and Tonawanda. If you are standing at this intersection, I want my neighbors to know where they can access free food. And when we started this conversation, everyone, it was not abundantly clear to those who were providing free food and to those neighbors who were in need of it, when there was a gap and where the places were that they could access food and when. One of the reasons why is because we have 33 languages spoken in our neighborhood. One of the reasons why is because many of our neighbors are not able to get online or have limited access to information because they're accessing information through their handheld. One of the other reasons why is because our neighbors are busy being neighbors and raising their children and taking care of their homes. And we decided that we were going to make sure that they knew where they could find free food and that we would be at the core of bringing resources to those neighbors that were working to provide free food. So both of our providers, one of which you'll hear from at the end of the call, is actually in walking distance this intersection. And it's really important to me that I show everyone. So if we could just advance the next slide. Thank you. So some of the definitions we're going to talk about are food security, food justice. Food security means having at all times both physical and economic access to sufficient dietary needs for a productive and healthy life. In order to have healthy neighbors and vibrant and strong neighbors, they need to access food. One of the things that I am going to say as I sit in the zip code that we talk about is that a family is food secure when its members do not live in fear of hunger or fear of hunger. I'm going to repeat that one more time. A family is food secure when its members do not live in fear of hunger. Food justice for Buffalo Public School students and their families requires acting in and on the current food system. So there is a food system in place. And one of the things that we wanted to do with WSPN was to really better understand it through the lens of our neighbors. We wanted to bring into focus equity and disparities from the perspective of our neighbors who are the most vulnerable, but also use a global perspective. I am a person that hails from English as a second language family. One of the things that I've asked my colleagues and I've challenged them to think about is in the 33 languages or plus, because I believe that number has likely grown in my neighborhood. Do we think the word pantry, food pantry, translates in all those languages? So food justice is just asking that question. Food justice is just saying there is a food system, and we really want to understand how do we interact with that system from the perspective of the most vulnerable. Could we advance to the next slide? Okay, so a food bank is a nonprofit that safely stores millions of pounds of food. And a food pantry is a distribution center where hungry families can receive that food. Okay, so definitions are really important here because one of the things that we're doing is empowering our neighbors to understand the nuances of the food system. And that really starts with definitions. Because every community is different, there are many different kinds of pantries. Next slide, please. So we have both community dining and pantry services in 14207. Again, between Blackrock and Riverside, there's about 15,000 residents with about 40% poverty rate before COVID. So if you're looking at where we offer pantry services, you're looking at the blue building, again, in walking distance, that intersection that we showed you before, 2.2 miles away from the door of Buffalo State. We also have community dining. Community dining means a really, really important asset to our community. And I can tell you that I've rang the door of neighbors to ask them about their food insecurity, and they tell me that community dining is really important. So community dining is this idea that neighbors or that others will pre-prepare food and make it available for folks in COVID due to social distancing guidelines for grab and go. So at this church, every Tuesday and Thursday, you can go up to the window, which will be shown later in our presentation, and say that you are representing a family of 8, and they will give you 8 servings of hot food for you to take for the day, no questions asked. It was really important when we started the Food Security Council that we recognized that both of these organizations were WSPN members. So how you become part of WSPN if you're an organization is you actually apply. So both of these organizations applied to become part of our consortium, and as COVID-19 evolved and the social distancing guidelines became part of the pace of life for our neighbors, we reached out to these 2 providers and we said, how can we help you? And that's really what started the Food Security Council conversation. So if we could just advance the next slide. Thank you. So the Food Council story. This story is at the core to my heart. COVID-19 started and the BPS schools closed for our students, and that was a challenge. Our Buffalo Public School system is fantastic with providing food and a needed resource. In August of 2020, we began a conversation with those members that we showed you in the prior slide. We came to them and we said, we are SUNY Buffalo State, we are WSPN, we are a core group of 12 organizations on a steering committee. We understand that you're being overburdened, right? That our neighbors are hungry. How can we help you? And it was a private conversation. We started first in email and then appropriately met over Zoom. Around September, we created a mission. We started inviting additional stakeholders to the table, including our partners in city and county government. And I think it's really important to highlight that we started as a provider group, as a place where our providers could come and really talk to the university, a large neighbor and anchor institution about what their challenges were. Okay, so in November of 2020, we conducted our first meal distribution. As a part of the Food Security Council, our providers were saying that they were having a hard time meeting the need. And as our traditional holiday of Thanksgiving advanced, we were really grateful to receive a gift from the Rich Family Foundation, which provided our nonprofit providers the opportunity to purchase food to be directly given to the community. That November, a group of 15 volunteers compiled 150 meal kits. Each meal kit had a 15-pound turkey. It had a bag of carrots, it had potatoes, it had cranberry sauce and gravy. And we had the privilege of giving those meal kits away at 3 locations, one of which we're going to talk about. We gave them away at the church that we showed you, we gave them away at the pantry, and we gave them away at a new place that began to be a resource for our neighbors. We could advance, also, sorry, if we could go back. So one of the things, because I'm getting excited, we created was a food finder flyer. So essentially what we were hoping to do with the Food Security Council with our providers was to create an opportunity for cross referral. So we wanted our pantry to be telling our neighbors about our place where we could access hot community dining, and we wanted our community dining place to be telling our neighbors about pantry. So one of the ways that we were able to do that in partnership with Feed More, we were given the information for when our mobile pantry comes. So that's actually really important because one of our partners, Feed More on the Security Council, provides a mobile pantry. So we had a flyer that was requested by our neighbors, by a nonprofit provider that said, can you just give me one flyer, one sheet where all the information is? So that November, the food finder flyer was created, and it's something that remains to be at the core of our WSPN work. So again, 150 meal kits went out into the community, and we created our food finder flyer. So I think at that time, everyone, I knew that I had my work cut out for us, and that the private conversation we started was beginning to form into an infrastructure. You can progress to the next slide, please. So in December of 2020, we initiated a project that is close to my heart. It's called Kids Day. So Christmas Eve, we were actually open at our Food Security Council hot meal provider location. With cross donations from WSPN providers, we were able to provide children pizza, meal kits of cookies so that they could prepare Christmas cookies. We also received a grant from Project Flight, and we were able to give children age-appropriate books, and we received a donation of stuffed animals from one of our partners. So every adult and child that came to the Food Security Council food access point on Christmas Eve, because there were those individuals that were there and I had the privilege of being there, received a gift for their child that included a age appropriate book. And all of those resources, I say, were neighbor raised. I never, throughout the time of this project, have ever asked any neighbor for a resource. They have all, out of the goodness of their heart, volunteered. So I say that we neighbor raise resources. We never fundraise. We talked about how we were going to support our families. And with Kids Day, we actually partnered with a local food service provider who donated 6 pizzas and gave that also that day juice. So in December, we gave out hams, we gave out potatoes, we gave out pizza, we gave out Christmas gifts, and everyone was just excited to see our collective effort. So we're meeting at this point, everyone, every other Monday, and we're saying to ourselves, okay, we started a conversation with providers. By January, we have folks from vulnerable communities part of the conversation. We have the Korean Society of Buffalo. We have the Assembly Iglesia Cristiana, who congregation has the life experience of food insecurity. And we really have a full-fledged committee, which continues to grow. So in February of 2021, we did another project, started planning for spring. But in January, we were also able to give out 250 meal kits. We gave those out at 3 distribution sites, and around January, the Blackrock Pantry, Emergency Food Pantry gains a name, and it starts to be open every Saturday. So again, in Blackrock, which is a smaller community in Riverside, there are 3,991 people, 1,674 households. And what the theme was happening in our Food Security Council was that these households needed a specific food pantry resource that was outside of the food pantry resource that was available. So again, we neighbor raised resources for the pantry, and that pantry effort is in partnership with Iglesia Cristiana and Friends of Night People. They are distributing food in a location which they were priorly not distributing food every other Saturday to neighbors in walking distance. And part of that conversation began and lives in our Food Security Council. And we are hoping that they will be able to remain a staple in the community. In February of 2021, as I mentioned, we started planning for summer. So summer is a really exciting time for us. We are providing technical support, outreach, and resources to create additional summer lunch resources where children 18 years and younger can access free meals Monday through Friday. So again, part of what our mission is with the Food Security Council is not to create anything, not to create redundancies, but to look at the food security system and say, how can we make this stronger from a neighbor's perspective? And how are our most vulnerable neighbors interacting with the food system? If you could progress to the next slide. So our Food Security Council has 3 goals, and they continue to evolve because this work is live. This is a picture of the SUNY Buffalo State Rotary Club in front of the pantry. These students volunteered literally in the morning, and in the afternoon, it was a snowstorm, and they were there preparing meals, working directly with the pastor, speaking Spanish, asking questions about the neighborhood, asking questions about the pantry, and can continue to have an interest in coming back. They were there preparing meals. So we give out food every other Saturday at the Blackrock Emergency Pantry. In the Food Security Council, we hope to strengthen the food security network. We hope to, yay Rotary Club, we hope to empower communities of the food insecure, of which I am a member and was a member as a child. And we hope to build relationships and support innovation because we have so much resource, we have so much energy, and we have so much intellect at SUNY Buffalo State. WSPN is just one of the ways that we demonstrate our commitment to our neighborhood. If we could progress to the next slide. Our neighbors. So quickly, this is a photo depiction of our neighbors. So Joe here is Friends of the Night people. Pastor Juan and his wife Maritza support Iglesia Cristiana in Counter Ministries with God, and they actually provide, in partnership with Joe, the hot meals. If we could just progress to the next slide. We have Evelyn from the North District, Faustina from the Korean Society of Buffalo, Jose and Luz Vega, who both dedicate almost 40 hours a week for free to support their neighbors. We have Debbie Lombardo from the Riverside Business Association. So many, if we could progress to the next slide. Thank you. We have Mike Alessi. We have our folks at Riches, Nick Calandra from Hearts of the Homeless, Ariel Peters from the Western New York Homeless Alliance. If we could progress to the next slide. Now we've always had Feed More at the table. They've always been active and they've been part of the conversation. We have University of Buffalo, who has leveraged volunteers and just provided resources as SUNY colleagues at the School of Public Health and Health Professions. Pastor Torres, who runs a Blackrock emergency pantry. Blue Cross Blue Shield is a new addition, a longstanding neighbor in the community, and we are excited to work with them in the future. If you could progress to the next slide. We also partner with the County Executive's Office. Mark Polenkar's personally printed the flyers for us. Mark Polenkar's office made sure the flyers got to our neighborhood. The North District provided needed information. We have Amherst Helping Hands, which is a group of residents that live out in Amherst that are interested in supporting the West Side. And they came to us, with a project and with an interest, and that was what we hope. We also have Population Health. There are others that are in their notes. There are others that are part of the conversation. And essentially what we're doing at SUNY Buffalo State, and I want to stress this as a neighbor, is we're holding a conversation. We're holding space where people who want or have an interest or have a desire or have a capacity to support the food security network or want to be part of the conversation can come. And I think personally, just convening that conversation is really part of the value of SUNY Buffalo State and is a demonstration to our commitment to make sure that our neighbors are fed. If we could progress to the next slide. So I'm watching time knowing that our community partner is going to come in. Part of our food security successes, you'll hear from him. As a result of the food security network, we have Nick. Thank you for joining us. I'm coming to a close soon. We have fed more neighbors and we continue to feed more neighbors by supporting the infrastructure. We created the Food Finder flyer, which we continue to create and is a resource both digitally and in person. We have empowered neighbors to share information of their lives. When we give away food security kits, we ask neighbors to share information with us that really speak to their vulnerabilities. And we are able to really find out some of the nuances in why our neighbors were not accessing food or what are their challenges. And our community partner, Nick, is going to talk directly about that. So you'll see a window here. I want everyone to focus on the brick. There is a window and it just humbly says pick up meals here. Nick Calandra, who's on the call, has personally given out stuffed animals, cups, and bags, so many things that have gone out that window. Joe here has given food. People have given time and effort. Ridges has given cookie kits that have gone out the window, hams, turkey, because people humbly, like you'll see the young girl, line up and look for that window as a resource, right? And know that behind the window are their neighbors and they will not be judged. They will just be helped. If you could progress to the next slide, please. Okay, so our results. I'm going to share results from our November distribution just because we have good data folks working on our data from the December, January distributions. I want to thank Dr. Del Merico for his support with WSPN and for our data. So in November, we brought 750 pounds of produce. We had 428 neighbors fed. We had 150 turkeys that were personally given away by the hands of neighbors. We had over 15 volunteers. Nick will tell you it was a really exciting time to put together food. We had 3 distribution sites. We asked our neighbors questions when we were distributing the food, and we found out that 82.1% of our neighbors that we served had children in their household. Again, WSPN's mission is that children and families are vibrant and safe. They must have food to be vibrant. They must have food to learn. So finding that 2% of our families had children was really, really important to us so that we understood who we were serving. Again, continuing hundreds of years of service to Buffalo Public School children at SUNY Buffalo State. 29.6% of our neighbors had no internet access at home, really validating why the Food Finder flyer was important and was asked for. 49.2% of our neighbors identified as being reliant on food pantries for their food to survive. And that's why Nick's work is really important. And you're going to hear from him about how it's changed during COVID. 50.8% of our neighbors reported that they had children enrolled in school. So it's really important to remember that we have children that are not enrolled in school because they are either too young or out of the system. And we need to really look at our food security system and account for those children as well. 58% of our neighbors served were females. Again, my president is female, my director is female, many of the folks who led this project are female, and to see that 60% of our neighbors that we served were female was really important, keeping in mind what challenges our single mothers face in the core. So we understand that our data will reveal more things about our neighbors, but we really want to take the time to look at that data. So in January, when we were able to provide another meal distribution kit, we asked different questions. And in later presentations to the community, we'll talk about that data and what that data has revealed to us as a coalition and at SUNY Buffalo State. If you could continue on to the next slide. Perfect. So we're coming to the close. We're going to hear from our community partner, but one of the things I wanted to do was kind of lift up some of the narratives from our registration sheets in November. So again, when our neighbors were coming to access our food kits, which had 15-pound turkeys, potatoes, carrots, cranberry sauce and gravy, we asked them a couple of questions like their name and their address, and we also asked them, to share. And we had a neighbor that just bluntly said that they go without. And I think that really stuck out for me because that woman was just, so blunt in saying it. We have some pictures of our neighbors here that came out for the food distribution in November. One of the core values with WSPN is empowering vulnerable communities of the food insecure. So we have to really lift up those neighbors' voices, and we'll be doing that in later times in cooperations with other departments on campus by issuing a report. If you can progress to the next slide. So we're advocating for our neediest neighbors. This is a wonderful transition. I'm going to hold a couple more minutes and then give the space to Nick. Part of what we wanted to do was tell the stories of those who received their November meal kit, because again, the data that we're looking at, the impact that we're looking at is from November. We'll have later presentations about other distributions, but we served a great grandmother caring for her 8-year-old great granddaughter alone. We served a single mom with 4 children living alone with children all under the age of 10 years old. We served a senior citizen couple that had no transportation and no internet at home that walked to Pantry to access their resource. We served a displaced family of 5 whose children were not enrolled in Buffalo Public Schools that were doubled up living with relatives. Part of our work at SUNY Buffalo State is to really lift up the experiences of these individuals and to use all of our might at SUNY to make sure that we can create an immediate impact in their neighborhood. I am really humbled to present this work because this work represents the efforts of really groups of people who have thought so deeply about how to create a stronger food security network. And I'm going to introduce Nick from Hearts from the Homeless, who I am internally grateful for and so excited to give the floor to.
Good afternoon, everyone. Talia, thanks for having me, and great job articulating all the work that has been accomplished over the last few months and years. This is it's really neat to see it all kind of coalesce in this presentation and hear from you firsthand.
Nick, thank you so much.
As you alluded to, we did see over a 300% increase in the need, particularly at our food pantry. For those of you who don't know a lot about Hearts, Hearts for the Homeless was founded in 1990 to serve the chronic poor and homeless on the street with a mobile soup kitchen. And over the last 30 years, our ministry has taken many different forms. And one of the newest and I would say most rapidly growing part of our nonprofit is the food pantry in Riverside on Tonawanda Street. We opened that pantry in January of 2020. a bit ahead of a timetable that we had in place due to construction for a permanent location. So all this work that we've been accomplishing has been really in a temporary form, and we hope to move the pantry just across our parking lot to a building we've been rehabbing for its permanent location. But if you just kind of phrase that in your mind and think that we opened in January of 2020, and about 8 weeks later, the pandemic started to unfold, we went from serving around 5,000 meals a month out of the food pantry to over 20,000 meals a month. And it was really like a matter of turning a light switch on. As soon as everything started closing down, the increase in need really took off. And that was from folks all over Western New York, not just 14207. Through our physical food pantry at 890 Tonawanda Street and other pantry partnerships we did with Feed More, we saw folks really all throughout Western New York accessing these resources for the first time. And I think for a lot of people, that was a very scary and uncertain time because they had never done this before. And we tried to meet those folks where they were with dignity and love. That's really at the core of who we are. WSPN has really helped leverage our existing resources, I think, in order to serve more people. That really excites me. Talia being able to connect our pantry with other community leaders. I've always said to my team, if we're going to do this for 10 families, let's do it for 100 families, because we're already going through the process of having this food pantry in place. Let's serve as many folks in our community and get the word out about the food pantry being here. And really, WSPN has helped make that, I think, possible more and more over time. I did have a bit of an aha moment at one of our unrestricted food giveaways, where a community leader came in and was speaking a different language. I think it was a Burmese dialect. And it really resonated with me. Like, this is some of the work that we need to continue, is connecting people in the community with these resources. And to see that unfold, just in front of my eyes, it was an honor to be a part of. Over the last 30 years, our operation has been able to meet this need because people have invested in donating and supporting hearts for years prior to COVID. I think that the pandemic really highlighted the value and the need for smaller and mid-sized agencies at the grassroots level. And we hope and pray that the increased support and awareness continues long after the pandemic. Because I do think this is an opportunity where we can use this moment to really increase the food security in our communities and the food justice, so that we're not just meeting the need in terms of the volume, but where people need to be met in terms of their ethnic background, both for food and language, so that we can communicate effectively. I love when Talia mentions, does food pantry translate to other folks? And so being a part of this group has really opened my eyes to so many things, and I think it's helping us as an organization be a better partner for the community. And I think it's just really a question of rather when, if not if, another large-scale event such as COVID affects our communities. And we want to really encourage everyone to stay engaged. Engage with a community organization, a nonprofit, a local church that's supporting the community at that level, because your support through volunteering or donating really goes such a long way to making the work possible. So just really honored to be a part of this group and kind of shed some light on folks that are being underserved in a variety of different ways, and so we can meet that need moving forward.
Nick, thank you so much. I can tell everyone that my parents were so excited when I met Nick. The Homeless has been a core for my family. It's provided needed resources of clothing. I've shopped there before interviews. And when I met Nick, I was so excited because I know how important that building is. Again, everyone, there are over 46 licensed food stores, over 50 restaurants in 14207, and Nick is the only food pantry. So Nick, thank you for your work. Thank you for Joanne and Maria and for everyone that works there. Thank you for the committees every other Monday and the calls and the texts. Progress to the next slide. Nick, I know I'm always bothering you. So what we're really encouraging people, and as Nick said, is to join us. We are going to be pushing into BMHA locations. We are going to be supporting summer lunch, but also conducting what Nick was talking about, which is pantry outreach. We're hoping to bring folks that speak Spanish, folks that speak different languages into vulnerable communities with the information about food pantries so that we can enroll folks at food pantry. We're hoping to give resources to the individuals that attend summer lunch. And again, summer lunch is a USDA federally funded program. So with WSPN, we're not doing anything new. We're not creating redundancy. What we're doing is strengthening the system that's already there. So if you have any interest, summer lunch starts July 5th, and Nick knows it ends August 13th. We have applications out that are in the community and are available to anyone who has a 501c3 that's interested in supporting. And that is the program that we are focused on supporting. Because we work at SUNY Buffalo State, we plan a semester ahead. So my director knows that as soon as our summer lunch sites are set up, we think about the holidays. We think about what's next. And I think that is the beauty of what WSPN is. I want to close our presentation and allow folks to ask any questions, but I want to say that I am your neighbor. I live in 14207. I work at SUNY Buffalo State, and I have the privilege of working with WSPN, which is a coalition of different organizations that are really trying to look at our existing food system, partner with our partners in government, partner with others to make our neighbors have the ability to access food easier. So I am going to turn it over to our host. I want to say thank you on behalf of our project. I want to encourage everyone to engage with us if you have the opportunity, and also follow us on Instagram. And or if you want to connect with me or Nick, please call our office and we will be happy to connect with you.
Thank you, Talia and Nicholas, for sharing with us the great work that you do for our community. And this is the time to for everyone that has questions and concerns. I'm gonna give like a few moments. And before we wrap it up, I have two more questions that I would like for you to answer. Allow me to put them up. Can anyone take their time and answer these two questions, please? We have about 30 seconds left.
Talia, Nicholas, because this is Carol, and I just wanted to just out, are you having trouble with volunteers? Do you have enough? Is it something that you're always in need of, or can I help in any way?
Carol, first, I just want to acknowledge your leadership in this space, and I just want to say thank you for being here. And then I'm going to defer to Nick, but working with your students was tremendous, and I really am proud of Emily from Rotary Club, so I just want to say that. Nick, go ahead.
Hi, Carol. Great question. We have a lot of volunteer opportunities, probably more than ever before, at least in our near past. And that's really, I think, because of the food pantry and the work that we're doing and some of the other expanded partnerships we're doing in our commercial kitchen that you see in my background today. A lot of that information is right on our website and in our most recent newsletter. So if you go to heartsforthehomeless.org and look for our newsletter section, the most recent newsletter highlights some of the opportunities that are open really as we speak in our food pantry and also in our commercial kitchen.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Aurora, thank you for putting that in the chat. Does anyone else have any questions about the Food Security Council? We meet every other Monday and we're open to the public.
Mm-hmm. If there is no questions, I would like to express my gratitude for all you all. We thank each and every one of you for your patience, time, and participation. We could not have it done without you all. Thank you for our presenters, Talia and Nicholas, all the attendants. Thank you for the college and the community. Those who support me from the beginning and